have regarding this session. As soon as the session gets over, one after the other, your queries will be taken up by the speaker, and the speaker will be addressing your queries. So this is the one of the foremost important rules for this webinar today. Without delaying much further, I would request Dr. T.K. Mishra, sir, to take over now. Over to you, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Nidhi. We have with us our college principal, Dr. S.P. Agarwal. And, very lately, I could infer the meaning of his initials SP. Well, to me, S stands for Success Champion and P stands for Prosperity Champion. Okay, so both. He is a success champion as well as prosperity champion. And let me tell you, Emiliya, he has really made a turnaround in the college in terms of work culture, in terms of life education. Okay, now without losing much time, I would invite our principal, Dr. S.P. Agarwal, to share his valuable thoughts and his insights.
Thank you,
Dr. Agarwal.
T.K. Mishra. Thank you very much for the nice words. First of all, welcome to Emiliya. Welcome to all our teachers, guests, students, and faculty members, and every other person who has joined us this afternoon. It's really a wonderful initiative by Dr. T.K. Mishra that he has invited Emiliya, who is a professional speaker in the area of body, mind, physique during the COVID. Well, every day in India, even Emiliya must be knowing that we are going through a very unique, crisis, which I think United States has already been to. And we always hear from different mouths, from doctors, from professionals, from psychologists. These days, there is a debate going on between Baba Ramdev and our medical professional, because he's preaching something else, professional says something else. So we are not going into that, but definitely the COVID has affected the body and the mind. And it is not that I'm affected, you are affected, everybody is affected. When I sit at home, see the TV, see the various social media things, we always feel that what we are going to do if it happens to you. So, we plan in a different way, we think in a different way. And another important aspect is that we always feel scared that, even if something small happens, we feel that something is going wrong. So how to take care of this? We have professional Emiliya. Emiliya, let me tell you, the college has been very active in last 1 year. And during COVID, we have done much more work than we usually do. Besides teaching, learning, research, which our teachers and students are doing, we have trained 100,000 teachers how to do teaching and online teaching, and ICT techniques and life skill techniques. We are doing that also. So, our teachers, our listeners will be benefited by your professional experience. So, it's really wonderful, and thank you. And over to Dr. T.K. Mishra.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. You are a real practitioner of, the values, the ethics and everything. Okay. Well, today, the science of psychology, we are trying to test what is the strength of psychology. It has a lot of insights. And we need these insights pretty badly today. Insights on how to promote mental health, how to gain physical mastery, and how to become more resilient or bounceable. This is what we are going to discuss today. Well, I had fascinating interaction with Emiliya doing a 30-day physical mastery course. She calls it better than before. Some of the valuable insights were listening to the wisdom of your body, breathing exercises to boost lung power, and gratitude exercises. She mentioned like how many times do we thank our belly for having digested all junk food that we take. So these things was so interesting. And she said that mind says I'm tired. Listening to the negative news of COVID, etc. Mind says I'm tired, and heart wants more. Dil mange more. Now that is the cause of stress. Okay, mind doesn't want to work and heart wants more. Well, on that note, I welcome the champion of well-being, champion of happiness, and champion of flourishing, Emiliya. Over to you, Emiliya.
Thank you so much, TK. Thank you, SP. Thank you, Dr. Agrawal. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Also, our star, wherever she is, she got to demonstrate what we're talking about here. Because when we talk about real-time resilience, we talk about how do we handle the difficulties, the stresses. Nidhi's smiling now. She's like, yes, that was stressful, but she looked very calm in how she handled it. This is all the same thing that we're talking about here, because big stressors, little stressors, they impact us in our body in the same way. They'll give us more of a stress response if it's immediate threat, but these things are still perceived in our body as difficult things. And so the question we're looking at today is, how do we handle it? How do we handle the things that we're facing, whether they be technical difficulties that you're having or something that you're physically needing to deal with in front of you, or the stresses that our minds create, the what if? What if something happens to me? What if I get sick? What if something happens to my loved ones? What's going to happen into our future? I have been fascinated by the field of psychology and positive psychology and how the mind works, I would say my whole life. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey, about what brought me here, because I think it can give you some context about how I work and how I show up in the world. My first experience of needing to be resilient started when I was 14 years old. My family and I went through a very traumatic life event, which is my only brother, my only biological brother. He passed away in an accident. He was swimming in the ocean in New York, and I should say I'm here in New York City joining you guys. He was swimming at night with his fiance and some friends. They were 24 years old, just partying and enjoying a hot summer night here in New York. And his fiance started drowning, and my brother ran in to try to rescue her, and she survived, but my brother passed away. And that was, I was 14 years old, barely starting off my life. And that was the first major life tragedy that I had experienced. And it got me very interested in the role of resilience, because for years afterwards, I figured out how to deal with my life. I figured out how to care for my parents, needing to have the worst thing that could possibly happen to a parent is to lose your child, and thinking about how to support my parents through all of this, and how to, just figure out how to put one foot in front of the other. And people would say things to me like, wow, Emiliya, you're so remarkable. You're so resilient. Like, your family went through this trauma, and yet you're still figuring out how to get good marks in school, and you're working, and you're helping people, and you're happy. And they used to say this thing to me as though something was special about me. They'd say, wow, you're so resilient. So by the time I entered college, I was very curious around, well, what does that actually mean to be resilient? And how do people face difficulties, and how do they be resilient? How do they actually bounce back? Is it a trait that just some people have and other people don't? Or is this something that can be trained? Because I actually hated when people would say to me things like, Emiliya, you're so remarkable, you're so wonderful. And while it's very sweet to hear TK say I'm a champion of these things, in my mind, I think, I'm just a human being doing my best with the skills that I have, and to put one foot in front of the other. And what research shows is that most of us, we actually do this. When difficult things happen, we we figure out a way to handle it. Do we always handle it in the best way possible? Maybe. But what I learned when I was, after I finished my undergraduate, I went on to do a master's degree in positive psychology, asking this question: what does it take for people to be resilient? And is it just something that I had that other people didn't? Because when people would say, you're so amazing, I'd say, I think to my mind, really? Like, you'd probably do the same thing if you were in my position, because that's what we do as human beings. What I learned through the science of positive psychology is we are naturally resilient. Our bodies are very resilient. If you think about it, like if you, when I was 18 years old, I broke my collarbone. I was practicing a martial art called Aikido, and I was rolling, and I broke my collarbone. I went to the hospital, and like I was all upset about it. And I had a very funny doctor. He kept making me laugh, which was not good because I was in pain, and he kept making me laugh. And I remember the joke he told me, you know what the good news is? I go, what good news can you tell me? I broke a bone. He goes, this bone is going to heal. And when it heals, it's going to heal back. It's going to be so strong, you'll never break it again. The left one, you might break it again, but this one will never break again. Because he said that the way that this bone heals is that when it breaks, not only does it reconnect, but the body lays down extra foundation to make it stronger, so it doesn't break again in the future. And that's what adversities actually give us the opportunity to do. In Japanese and Chinese, there's the word for crisis is a really interesting word, because the characters that make up the word crisis actually have double meaning. The two characters mean both crisis and opportunity. That the word for crisis comes from this idea that it is both what we call the opportunity and the difficulty. The danger and the opportunity are actually in one word, because it gets us thinking about the idea that perhaps those difficult moments give us an opportunity to learn and to grow. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want crisis. Like, none of us would have asked for this. And sometimes it's about just figuring out, how can I be the best version of me? And that's what I love about positive psychology, is that we call it the scientific study of happiness, well-being, and flourishing. And I was so blessed to have amazing teachers in my life that taught me that there was not only an art, but a science to the idea that we can change how we think, we can change how we feel, we can control our body. And so positive psychology started in 1998 as a science that asked this question, because we identified that prior to, the field of traditional psychology got very focused on the idea of how do we treat and how do we diagnose and how do we fix. And the idea was that if you took a person who was depressed or a person that was anxious, and you treated and you healed their stress or their anxiety, then your work would be done, because the person would be happy. You got rid of the thing. It's like if I had a splinter in my finger and I'm like, ow, I have a splinter, I can't hold anything, my hand hurts. And you take out the splinter, I feel good now, and I can go holding things. But happiness isn't the same way. Just because you're not depressed doesn't mean you're happy. Just the same way that just because you're not experiencing panic or stress in the moment does not mean that you are experiencing calm. And so positive psychology offers us an understanding of how does the mind work and how does the body work, and how do we learn to treat happiness and well-being as a skill. Because prior to in positive psychology, they thought mental health and mental illness were opposites. So if you got rid of one, you got the other. They just thought that they worked like this, and that if you didn't have mental health, you must have had mental illness, or if you have mental illness, you must not have mental health. And what the science shows is that they're not opposites. They are actually different. A person can be high on mental illness and low on mental health, or meaning they can actually have maybe they have a predisposition to maybe feeling a little depressed or maybe feeling anxious, but they could actually learn the skills of mental health and learn how to take care of themselves and actually live with what they're experiencing. Or just because you don't have depression or bipolar disorder or mania or psychosis or neurosis, just because you don't have any of these things doesn't mean that you are happy and that you're living a life of being fulfilled. And so what I want to do today is just offer you some strategies, or one very, very, very important strategy that I've learned through this pandemic, that I've done my best to spread this message to as many people as we can. Because if there's anything that this crisis has given us as an opportunity, it has united us globally. All over the world, we are all going through some element of this. It has impacted everyone, not a stone unturned on this planet that someone has not been impacted by this pandemic. And while things are opening up here in New York City, we were unfortunately hit first, the hardest in some ways, myself included. So I will just also share that. My brother, when he died, my mom got diagnosed with ovarian cancer about 2 years after my brother passed away. And we fought that disease for 10 years. And eventually my mom passed away when I was 27. And then my only remaining family member was my father, and he actually died of COVID on March 30th of last year. So when I say I've been personally impacted by this pandemic, one was the loss of my city. You still, like, things are starting to open up, but I walk the streets right here, and sometimes every other store is shut down. Some restaurants still trying to make it, but the heart of New York City, it was bone chilling to just see the city that never slept for the first time. And one of the most important things that I think positive psychology teaches us is we call it the science of flourishing. We call it the science of resilience, but I like to think of it as the science of personal mastery. And the person who taught me about personal mastery was one of my mentors, and I got to meet him when I was like 18, 19 years old. And he's actually of Indian descent. His name is Dr. Srikumar Rao. And he was first generation. He was born in India. He moved to New York with his family, has got a doctorate, and taught at Columbia University and also at Long Island University, where I was a teacher, where I was a student, and he was my teacher. And he taught a course called Creativity and Personal Mastery. And he used to say that he was the first one who introduced me to mindfulness and meditation and yoga and spirituality, and the idea that we could actually control our thoughts. It never occurred to me that I could turn off my thinking, or I didn't have to think the thoughts that I was thinking. And so he used to teach us a concept, and I still repeat, I can hear his voice in my head still to this day. And he would say, Emiliya, are you showing up in the world the way that you want to? Are you showing up in the world the way that you want to? And I'm going to ask you guys to even think about, like, all the things you're facing right now, good, bad, in between. Do you feel like at the end of the day, did you show up in the world the way that you wanted to? And that, I would almost say, is like, it's like my own personal definition of what I think positive psychology teaches us, because many people confuse what positive psychology is. They think of positive psychology as a happyology. They think of it as just, oh, it's just about making people happy, which it's not. It's actually, what it's saying is just because you're not depressed doesn't mean you're happy, right? So it's saying, rather than my job is done when you're neutral, my job continues until you feel a sense of flourishing, a sense of happiness, a sense of fulfillment. That's all we're saying. We're saying not just go from the negative to zero, we're saying go from zero to the positive. And in order to do that, we need skills. And I hope that from hearing me talk, maybe you'll get inspired to just Google or search the web for more about positive psychology, because the skills are out there. Many of them are the things that TK just listed. And what I would say is that the skills themselves are simple. The message I want to give to you today, it's the choice to apply the skills. That's the hard part. And it's very hard for us to apply those skills when our body is in a state of stress. Because when our body is in a state of stress and it is in a state of fear, you don't even think about those techniques or those strategies, those breathing exercises or the gratitude. Why? Because stress impacts our body in a way that narrows and focuses us. When you're if you're walking around your home and you hit your foot on the table or the bed or something, and your foot hurts, you're like, ow, my foot hurts. In that moment, you're not thinking, how do I help people in the world? What's the best way that I could positively impact society? Your foot hurts and all you're thinking about is your pain and how do I get rid of my pain? Well, stress does the same thing. And if there's anything that I've learned about the past year in the pandemic that I've tried to convey to people is how important it is to be able to calm your body down after those stress responses. So I would say to people, we'd all go through very similar things where like everyone is technically safe at home in their home. We were asked to stay home, we're asked to be away from people so we don't get this virus. But here we are, we know we're safe at home, but the brain is still caught in, well, what if this happens? And what if I lose my job? And what if I can't pay my bills? Or what if something happens to my family? What if I get it? And da da da. So this hypervigilance, even though they're safe, their body doesn't know that they're safe because their mind is still stressing. Or they would go to the grocery store, or they would go out. And so they go and they've got the mask and they got the gloves and they have all these things. And then they go out. And back then maybe back then we didn't know that that it wasn't so transferable by hands. It's very much still about the mouth. And we didn't know that. So people are literally walking around, they're afraid to touch anything. They're afraid to, we forgot, like they're afraid to come close to people, but that doesn't mean that you can't still acknowledge people. So suddenly people are afraid of people, everyone's sort of walking around like this. And so it was like we went out into that stressful environment. And back then, maybe it was a good idea to be a little stressed out, a little worried. But the question is can you come home and then tell your body, I'm no longer in a stressful situation. I'm home now. I'm safe. I can calm down. I can be with myself and I'm okay. The danger of this situation, I would say even more than the disease, is the fear and the stress that it leaves us with, and the stress of the what is and the stress of what's not, because even if you are not actually sick, it impacts your body. And the thing about our emotions is our immune system is impacted by our emotions. When we are happy, when we are grateful, when we are calm, our immune system response goes up. So if you do, God forbid, get something, you actually would handle it stronger when your immune system is high, when you take good care of your body. And TK mentioned thanking your body for those unhealthy treats. What if it was healthy treats, right? Because when your emotions are sad, when you're upset, we want to self-soothe ourselves. We maybe eat to self-soothe. We don't take good care of our bodies. Whereas when we're happy, we might want to go for a walk or exercise in the house or eat good food, get lots of sleep. Stress impacts our sleep. When we're constantly in the state of stress, it's like we don't get well rested. And so if you don't rest, our bed is where we recharge our batteries. That's actually when our body rebuilds our immune system. And so what happens is we're weaker than we would otherwise be simply because we are stressed out. And so if there's one message I can convey to you is that it's so important in order to show up in the world the way that we want to. We have to learn and give ourselves the opportunity to use the skills that you're being given. And the most important one is to tell your body, it's okay, I'm safe. Can you cuddle with your family and tell the body I'm safe? Can you do that deep breathing and relaxing to help yourself calm down? One of my favorite strategies for how to calm the body is a science called havening, Havening, havening. And it uses the role of touch in the body, just like this, up and down with the arms. So down with your arms, either across your arms or across your forehead or across your palms. And doing this for about 5 minutes, people will find that even when they're very stressed out, their body gets calmer. It's actually something very natural that we do when we're stressed out. Most of us go, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. We put our hand here. It's because when we touch these areas of our body, we can create a sense of calm. We do it for a baby. A baby's crying, we hold the baby close and we rub its back to calm it down. We need to do that for ourselves, to basically say to my body, even though there are scary things out there, even though there's a sense of uncertainty about the future, right here, right now, I'm okay, I'm safe. And when I do that, right here, right now, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm better at problem solving. We're not good problem solvers when we're freaking out. If anything, we just flood. right? It's like we're just paralyzed. We use the word paralyzed with fear. So we don't want to be paralyzed with fear. We want to be problem solving. We really want to roll up our sleeves and say, okay, how am I going to handle this situation? But when we're in this state of stress, we can't do that. So I hope that you will see and get really interested in this idea of how can I gain more mastery over my mind and over my body, and know that emotions aren't just things that happen to us. We can actually control how we feel. We can say, I'm going to calm myself down. We can say, I'm going to focus on the things I'm grateful for. I'm going to focus on my people, my friends, having connections with people. It's not that happiness and sadness are opposites. And it's not that you, and this is, for me, if there's anything I've learned, having had my brother, my mother, and my father all pass away, is that grief is an emotion that can coexist with other emotions. So while I was, when my mother passed away after 10 years fighting, the last 3 years were very difficult with her condition. She had a lot of medical intervention, a lot of time in hospital. So while I was so sad and I was so devastated, I was also relieved. The suffering was over, and I almost felt like, how can I feel? I wasn't happy, but I could feel positive emotion and negative emotion. With this pandemic, we can feel concerned, we can feel sad, we can grieve, and we can feel happy and okay and connected and determined and creative and curious. It's not opposites. And it can be very difficult because sometimes if we're in these places of stress, we forget we can also feel this other emotion too. They're not opposites, they can coexist. And the more that we just learn that these things can go together, the more we can give ourselves the permission to be human, the permission to show up in the world the way that we want to. And so you can ask yourself this question: what does it mean to show up in the world the way that we want to? It's not that positive emotions are good and negative emotions are bad. Losing my father has brought up a tremendous amount of sadness because, I went from having had lost a sibling and a parent to having had lost my whole family. So there are days where I'm very sad, and how I want to show up in the world that day is I want to be sad. And when I feel sad, I let myself really fully be sad. And when I do, it only lasts a little while, and then I'm able to go on to the next thing. And that's how I want to show up in the world. And sometimes we think that we should be happy or we should be this way. That's not what positive psychology says. Positive psychology says, can you digest your life experiences the same way that we would want to digest our food? We would say a person is physically healthy when they eat food, they break it up, they absorb what they need to absorb, and they poop out what they don't need. And we can say mental health is the same way. When life happens, you're having these experiences, you have to pivot and change how you're going to school, how you're learning, how you're interacting with people, all these new rules. What do? Well, if you get stuck and you push back, that's not healthy. That would be like eating something and then it makes you sick and you vomit or you throw it up. Or if you eat something and you don't, it just gets stuck. You get stuck in the sadness, you get stuck in the worry, you don't move it through your body. We would say you're constipated. We would say you're healthy when you're able to take the things that you're experiencing, be able to break it down and absorb what is this thing in my life teaching me? What is it giving me an opportunity for? What do I need? How can I do things differently? And when you do this, then you're able to get back on your feet and put one foot in front of the other, in front of the other, and to be resilient. So we want strategies, and I'll just review them because I've got 3 minutes left, and then I'm going to send it back. We're going to pass it over to you guys so you have an opportunity to ask questions, and hopefully the questions will pertain to this overarching umbrella, which is how to help you show up the way that you want to. If you're wanting to show up enthusiastically for your schoolwork, if you want to show up in a way that you want to be engaged, but you can't because your mind is all over the place, we'd say you're not showing up in the world the way you want to. How do we create how I want to be and how I am? How do we put them together, right? That's kind of happiness. I think it was the Dalai Lama who said happiness is when what you want and what you have are overlapped, right? If you're wanting this and if you want this much and you only have this much, right, then you're unhappy. But if what you want and what you have are in alignment, you're happy. And I would say if how you want to be in the world is how the way you're showing up, that's when you're happy. And so in order to do that, we first need to answer this question for ourselves on a moment by moment basis. How do I want to be? If I want to be present, but I'm distracted, how do I change that? If I want to be happy, but I'm sad, how do I change that? If I want to be in action, but all I want to do is take a nap, how do I change that? And the biggest part is first changing our bodily state and to calm that stress response, because most of us right now, we're very privileged. We're okay. You know, here you are, you're listening to a screen of a person who's on the other side of the planet. You know, it's 11 o'clock in the morning here. We're very blessed, and we're all going through very trying, difficult times. And we know that any one of us could not deal with this on our own right now. This is when we need to work together, to turn to one another, and to learn together and to get through this together, because no person is an island. And that's also very much backed by the science of positive psychology, that it's the people around us. If I didn't have the friends, the teachers, the community that I had, I would not be here doing what I do in the world, which is trying to teach the skills that have gotten me through these difficult times. And so with that, I will pass it on to our questions from our audience members.
Okay. Wonderful, Emilia. Like emotionally, you are so rich that we would love to go on listening and listening, never get tired. But time is a constraint. Uh, I think your landmark contribution was that the father of or the founder of positive psychology, Martin Seligman, you had an opportunity to be his student. And his theory, well-known theory of well-being, a model is PERMA. PERMA is positive emotions, engagement, relationship, meaningfulness, and achievement. But you added another dimension to it, that is V, vitality, PERMA V. Oh, that's a great thing. That, not only mental level, we should also consider the physical aspect. If you are not physically good, I mean, you will not be happy at all. You cannot be called, a complete person. Well, given me a chance, though I would like you to, reflect on that, but given me a chance on that, I would like to add another letter C, that is conscience. Your trinity, mind, body, and soul. Like Martin Seligman took care of mind, you took care of body. But the third aspect is also important, that is soul. So unless your mind, body, and soul, all the three things get satisfied, you cannot have, a lasting happiness or a real happiness, I would say. But that is my opinion. But I would like you to throw some light on how you added this new dimensions, vitality. And I feel that due to this particular aspect only, you could survive all those trauma, all ups and downs, in your life, and I mean, all those tragedies you could survive because of, that, health aspect, the body aspect, the vitality aspect. So I would like to reflect on that. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, TK. And I apologize for taking you guys on a walk with me there for a moment. Speaking of both consciousness and vitality, I have my best friend's puppy with me here, and he stole my sandal. And I had to go walk across my office to get this back because he has a lot of vitality, and he would have happily eaten my shoe by the time that this program was over. So I do apologize that I took you guys for a walk. I celebrate, TK, the role of consciousness, and I'm gonna make the connection for you in just a moment. So yeah, when I was going through my degree with Martin Seligman, I actually said to him, well, what about the body? You know, what about the body in all of this? And at the time, Martin believed that we took care of our body for the P element because it makes us feel good when we feel healthy, and being sick makes us feel bad. So the positive emotion piece is there, or we take good care of our body so that we can, because we set our physical goals, because I don't want to gain all this weight, and or I want to live a long life. And so he would say it's the A element, it's the accomplishment or the achievement. And that's why people do the things that they do in order to be healthy. So in this model, the idea is that you couldn't have an overlap, that the construct needed to be unique. Meaning is unique. Positive relationships is unique. And I challenged him on that, because when I came to positive psychology, I'd become a yoga instructor, and I had already been teaching people about the practices of taking care of their body. And I sat by my mother's side as we fought ovarian cancer together through treatments, and looking at how foods that she could eat to help deal with the side effects of chemotherapy, and the role of the body, and as her body started to fail her, it was very hard to have the positive emotions and the engagement, and the meaning and all of that. And so I started to argue with him that it is unique, and he didn't go along with it. And then 10 years later, he actually said, you know what, Emiliya, you're right. I'm now convinced that it was a missing piece of it. But then he said, now go out and prove it. Go out and research it and go out and prove it, which I run a very, very busy business. But I am actually right now, I'm on the last stage. I'm now in the dissertation phase of my doctorate in mind-body medicine, and my research is on vitality. And so I hope in the next couple of years that I'll actually publish on the uniqueness of vitality, because part of the other thing is that the way we thought mental health and mental illness were opposites, we sometimes think physical health and physical illness are opposites. So if you look at the questionnaires out there that ask people about health, how healthy are you? They're asking you, do you get migraines? Do you have a hard time sleeping? Do you, is your temperature high? We're actually measuring sickness, and medical system is about keeping us not sick, whereas health is about something else. Vitality is about something else. So I teach Perma V, and all of the graduates of my programs, they go out and they teach Perma V too, because we believe that it's a unique path to flourishing. And why do we take care of the body? Because the body is a natural organism, and it is moving towards well-being. It's its natural state to try to return back to health if we give it the right conditions. When it gets sick, it's just reacting to its environment, doing the best it can to try to take care of us, to keep us healthy and alive. And so why do people move their body? Because the body wants to move. Why do we eat healthy food? Because the body wants nourishment. Why do we breathe? Because we need breath for life force. And to your bit about consciousness, I would relate that consciousness and spirituality. We teach it in my model as part of meaning. Sorry, that's one of the dogs. They say hello. She'll calm down in a second. Come here. It's okay. I teach spirituality as part of meaning, because spirituality, or a sense of religion, gives us a sense of meaning and purpose. It helps us make sense of the world. It gives us a place where we feel like we belong and that life makes sense. So some of spirituality, I believe, is covered under meaning. But when you use that word consciousness and conscious, I actually also put that under vitality, because vitality is about energy. And vitality, there's two different types of energy. We talk about it as psychological vitality or physical vitality. But if you look at words like prana refers to life force, energy. And some would argue that prana is consciousness, right? It is that life force. It is that vitality. Prana is the energy of life. And it can be intertwined with chi, which is another philosophy. So every tradition has their own concepts around this idea of energy. And so I would actually say that when you say consciousness and I say vitality, I say we're saying the same thing. And when our body is strong, we actually can circulate that consciousness through us in a much stronger way.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. One important question to me, that I have done one course under Laurie Santos also from Yale, and she talks about hedonic adaptation. Like when we do exercises, it's quite natural that we get bored of it. Same exercise, getting out in the morning and doing this and this. So we lose interest and it becomes a boring activity after some time. Okay. So as she has explained that how to overcome this hedonic adaptation, whatever you have said, can you please tell us how to, handle this particular aspect? That though we agree that these exercises are important for body, breathing exercises and all these things, but after a point of time, it becomes, a stereotype kind of thing, and it doesn't, it loses its luster. So
Yeah.
I would like you to throw some light on that.
Yeah, I would love to. So let's take a moment to just reflect, what is this hedonic adaptation? So there's two forms of happiness that we talk about, hedonia and eudaimonia. And hedonia is a life of pleasure and things that feel good. And it's all the positive emotions that we're talking about. And then Socrates and Aristotle and Plato talked about eudaimonia, which was happiness not just as a life of feeling good, but also as a life of doing good. So having meaning and having a sense of purpose and being a good person, a person of virtue, a person of value, living your values, being a good, having good character. And both are important for a life of happiness. So when we talk about hedonism, we often refer to the feel good. And hedonic adaptation is this idea that because we're so resilient, we adapt to things very well. We adapt to our circumstances. And this is one of the reasons why we're so resilient. I think that if I were to say to any one of you, like 5 years ago, I would say, here's what you're going to be going through in life, in the world, and you're pretty much going to be okay. You would say, Emiliya, you're crazy. There's no way I could quarantine and not see my friends and not do these things and be okay. But I think one of the things that the pandemic surprised people about was how much they were okay, how much they just figured it out, and how they got used to this thing. We call it the new normal a little bit. It's like our new normal, right? Even like, especially kids are very resilient. And so you see these kids, they're like, yeah, I just wear a mask. It's like, if you were a child, you'd be like, really? Wow, that's like so weird. We get used to things. It's actually a very good, healthy response for us to be resilient, that we can adapt and we can keep moving. It's not such a good thing when we adapt to things that we want to get pleasure from, when we adapt to the people in your life. Like I had a boyfriend once, we were living together many years ago, and he was such a sweet, sweet, sweet man. He loved to bring me flowers. And so in the beginning, when he would bring me flowers, I would get all excited and I would take pictures of it and post it on social media. And I would pick different filters for the flowers, and I'd be so grateful for him. And then over the months, if I wasn't conscious of it to really appreciate him, he'd be like, oh, Emiliya, I brought you flowers. And I would be on the computer and doing something. I was like, oh, thank you, sweetheart. Can you put it in the vase? Not getting that same sense of gratitude and positive emotion from that same thing. So we adapt, and it's a very healthy response during stressful times. But for a life of happiness, when you adapt to the people in your life, when you adapt to the good things that you have, the things that we take for granted, the roof over our head, the access to food and water and to learning and to people, when we start to take those things for granted, or what happens is not only do we adapt, we sometimes call hedonic adaptation, we call it the hedonic treadmill, because it's like running in place and running and running and running, hoping that more things will make you happy, because we adapt and go, oh, I'll be so happy when I get that job. And then you get the job, and then happy for a little bit, and then you're sort of like, wah, wah. And you go, I'll be happy when I get the promotion. And you get the promotion and you make more money, and you kind of just go back. And then you go, okay, must not be that. I must need a partner. I'm going to be happy when I get married. And then you start searching for that. And each time you adapt and you adapt and you adapt, unless you learn the art of savoring And savoring is learning. And talk about personal mastery. When you learn how to savor well, you learn how to get more juice out, squeeze more juice out of the life experiences that you have, so that you don't actually need more things to feel happier. You can actually learn how to appreciate the things that you do have. You learn how to have those positive experiences express emotions. One of my absolute favorite quotes about positive psychology, in fact, I actually think it's the most brilliant one that summarizes why positive psychology is so powerful. And it was said by two researchers, Dr. Bryant and Dr. Veroff. They're the leading researchers on savoring. And they said, positive events alone are not enough to bring about positive emotions. We need to be able to tend to and appreciate the positive feelings that those positive events bring. That's pretty profound when you think about it. Positive events alone are not enough to bring about positive emotions. We have to learn to actually attend to and appreciate those positive events. You know, I know someone who she was awarded in Australia. She was one of the top 100 women in her industry under the age of 50, and she was awarded this award. And you know, you would, she remembers, like, everyone else, you would think that you would get this award and you'd feel so happy, and her, all of a sudden she was like, oh my gosh, all this pressure now to succeed and to lead up to this thing. So it wasn't a guarantee that she was feeling happy in that moment, right? Just because someone is seeing a sunset, just because you're witnessing a sunset doesn't mean you're seeing it. Just because you're eating something delicious doesn't mean you're tasting it. You know, that first bite, so good. Second bite, good. Third bite, fourth bite, fifth bite, you might not even realize what you're eating anymore if you're just eating it, unless you're mindful and you're present. And so there's 4 ways we can savor. We can express gratitude. When we express gratitude, we savor. We can bask. When we bask, we take pride in things. We say, wow. And it's not to other people. We're not saying, you know, tell other people, wow, look at me, what I've done. It's when you say to yourself, look at what I've done. Look at how I've made it, or what I've done thus far. It's a savoring inside. When we luxuriate around how something smells, or how something looks, or how something sounds, or how something feels, we're savoring. And when we are marveling at something, when we look at, you know, the flowers blooming and we go, wow, look at that, right? I mean, there's so many things in life that we can marvel at. Nature gives us so many opportunities. Like, how did that flower know exactly how to do that and be the same as all these other flowers around it, right? When you do that and you're feeling that sense of wow, you experience pleasure. And when we practice savoring and we treat it as a skill, we're less likely to adapt to the good things.
Well, wonderful. A small query was there that, I mean, taking cue from whatever you said, you know, if we relate actions with outcome, like today I went for a morning walk that helped me, you know, digest food, and I had a sound sleep. So every time if we start relating our actions with outcome, and then that becomes the source of motivation and inspiration, that, oh yes, I'm so good, I'm feeling good doing all these things. So that will not make things a boring exercise. If you keep on, you know, analyzing things, that what a good impact this particular act had on me. So that was my submission, and I think you would agree with that. Well, Anshika, do we have some question from outside, or if our
Yes, sir.
principal would, if
Uh,
our principal would like to ask some question? I think he has a
Thank
lot of
you.
insights. Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you. Okay.
uh, yeah.
Thank you, Amelia, for your intellectual lecture. I heard it, very carefully. And let me tell you, I'm really amazed and surprised that how you have maintained the family value being in United States, because I have lived in US for 5 years in Dallas, Texas, and my brother lives in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, and I have compared these two places. I have seen that Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh is very, very value system oriented society and family oriented society, rather than way South Dallas, Texas, where people are more carefree. That is one observation. I don't know about you. Another important thing is that see how you value these family, and how you have undergone and uh, came out of it. See, like myself, when some problem comes to you and your family, near dear family, it becomes very difficult to handle that. But when it comes to your friends, your near relatives, and if you get to know, it is very easy to handle. I can immediately do that work and somehow manage it. But when it comes to you, then your mind stops working. So that's what you have also said that way. But bringing out that thing, that in crisis with you only, how you behave, how you act, is very important. So though you have told us various techniques, if you want to comment anything on that, please do. Thank you.
Well, I think our principal wants to know that what makes you come alive? What makes you come alive? You face so many problems, personal problems, and still you are on the job and doing so well, and maintaining your health and everything, and doing your duties also. So our principal wants to know that what is that specific thing that brings you back on the rails?
Thank you for that question. It's a beautiful question. Um, it's a beautiful thing to reflect upon. A couple of things come to my mind. One is I'm living my purpose. For me, this is my reason for being in this world. I believe that each of us has a unique spark and a unique reason why we're here, and each person is valuable. We each bring our own little thing into the world, and I can't be TK, and TK can't be me. TK has his own magic. And the research on that, most college students are looking for their purpose. They want to know what's that thing that I'm uniquely here to contribute. And if I can just speak to one thing that's very interesting that the science says about it, is when you think about it as I'm looking for my purpose, when you're looking for your purpose in life, usually we're looking for something because it's lost. And what the research on purpose talks about is that it's not something that we ever really get to. It's you start to learn more about who you are and how you uniquely impact the world. So I feel very lucky that I get to be of service every day. And that's what I've been put here to do. And so that's very important to me. And I also think about, the tragedies I've gone through, particularly with the loss of my family. I think about what would they have wanted? My mother would not have wanted me to get stuck. She would have wanted, like, the best thing I can do for the legacy of my family is to be the best version of me that I can be. And so I think about, how do I want to show up in the world, and how would they have wanted me to show up in the world? And I'm no good to anybody if I'm stuck. And we think about, what is depression? Depression is the ultimate me-centered universe in some ways, because when I'm depressed, I'm thinking about me and my pain and the things that I don't do enough of and what's not working in my life. One of the best antidotes to when we feel depressed is go do something for somebody else. That weekend that my father died, I sat by his side. I was very blessed that I got to keep him home, and I got to take care of him at home, and to be with him when he transitioned. And I was, that same morning, on the line on a Zoom call with 100 students, teaching them about positive psychology, being honest with them about what I was going through. But my opportunity to serve them heals me. And because human beings, we're not wired to be isolated. We're not wired to be self-centered. We are wired to need to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's what purpose and meaning is about, something bigger than myself. And so what keeps me going every day is that I get to be of service to people like yourself. And if I just focus too much on myself, I would be depressed. If I just sat around thinking about, the fact that I can't wait to get married one day and have a family of my own, and I don't have that yet. And I can be very sad about how much I want family and I don't have family. Or I could instead say, okay, it'll happen one day when it's meant to. And right now I'm just going to do me, and I'm going to focus on what I need to do to put one foot in front of the other. So it's the difference between being self-centered and other-centered, which was actually a very powerful lesson that was also taught to me by Shukumar Rao, when over a decade ago. And he would say the power of being other-centered, the great wisest people in the world, Mahatma Gandhi and others, their wisdom is how much you didn't see them focusing on themselves. And we need some focus on ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. I'm not saying that you just become a martyr, but this idea of really thinking about how can I be of service? How can I make an impact? And I'm just gonna mind the clock because I've got a class in 1 minute. So I'm just gonna.
Okay. The adage that when a student is ready, teacher is there. You have reminded me of that adage time and again. Always you remember your guru and everything for that. That's wonderful. Dr. Anshika, if you have something to ask.
Sir, it's a very great session. The chat box on the YouTube live is full of very good remarks. Everyone is thankful, cheering her up. Some mild questions, but ma'am has answered them during her sessions and the questions asked by you and sir. Um, First, I'd just like to extend our sincere gratitude and thanks to her for sharing her knowledge and different techniques, how to deal with stress and how to calm down our emotions physically, emotionally, and in spite of difficult time, she managed to give her time, and we are really thankful, ma'am, for you. We are also thankful to our participants who have registered for this webinar, as well as the participants from the faculty induction product 10. And we are also thankful to our organizing team, our first and foremost our guiding support, Dr. SP Agarwal, without whom he's the lighting force, like without whom we cannot do anything. He's there, and he motivates us to do all the things. Our director, Dr. TK Mishra, School of Happiness, as well as the vice principal. He is a very visionary man, and he do everything, and he's a single man army, I can say that. And also a technical team, and Dr. Nikhil Rajput, Mr. Ravinder Bist, and Miss Nidhi Mato, for making this program a successful story and making it look like seamless. And once again, thank you all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I guess we can stop YouTube live.
Yeah.
Ravi,
Oh, yes.
stop. Ravi.